Hello and welcome to Caffeine Entertainment, and this is another hot take video. I'm Mental9R, your host, and my co-host Finn Tintin is with me as usual. And today we are talking about the controversy that's hit X once again, as Jeff Keighley has come out and they have clarified some of the rules around what games can be nominated. This includes Game of the Year and games with just that have DLC can now be nominated. And we've seen that in the past, and it's caused some eyebrows to raise. They also consider remakes and remasters potentially, well, remakes anyway, as potential Game of the Year candidates. So, Finn, what are your thoughts on this? Because, man, I've got some thoughts.
Okay. So you've heard in the past that I don't know what your thoughts are. So I might be stepping on a
I've
minefield here.
purposely kept them to myself.
So you've heard in the past, I'm not the biggest fan in general of remasters and remakes, maybe more, but not readjusted versions just for games that have just come out 2 years ago. I'm not the biggest fan in the world. So
Yes.
kind of like, I mean, I would probably prefer if they weren't included, but I'm not that broken up about it either. And I'll say this: number one, and I'm thinking as I'm saying this now, I kind of tend to think that DLC, unless it's a standalone game, it shouldn't really be part of the Game of the Year. It can add to the original title's claim to be Game of the Year as DLC, but if it's not a standalone thing, something you can't go out and buy by itself and play it, then it probably shouldn't be part or considered for Game of the Year in my mind. Now, and then as regards the remakes or remasters or whatever, this would be difficult to enforce. But my thought is this: like if The Last of Us 2, for example, comes out and it's an amazing game and it's Game of the Year, and then they do a remastered version of it like 2 years later. I mean, based on the criteria that got it to win the first time round, as long as it's as good or better, it should probably be one of the ones based on the fact that it's included that would win the next year or 2 years later as well, which I wouldn't be a huge fan of. And so my thought is this: to be nominated, and as I say, this might be hard to implement, but to be nominated or to be eligible for more awards, there should be some criteria by which it is different than the original game, right? There should be like either a percentage or extra content or some significant difference, like
Something like I don't know, at least 50% of it's been rewritten.
yeah. As I say, smarter people than me would have to figure out what that criteria is. But as I say, from a gut perspective, I could see that Final Fantasy VII was very, very different than the original Final Fantasy VII, and therefore I would say, yeah, that should be potentially considered. Right? Maybe it's a combination of how many years are between and as you say, the
I was
amount
just
of.
gonna say that.
Uh,
Like
uh,
maybe it has to be at least 2 decades old or something to qualify.
that's probably a long time in video games. I was thinking more like 5 years
That's why
plus.
I'm saying it.
Yeah.
Because, look at what happened with The Last of Us 2, right? Few-year-old game. Now it's eligible. Well, it
Yeah,
would
but
have been under
yeah,
these rules if it would have come out this year, but
yeah.
I just think that's dumb
Yeah,
to
even The
me.
Last of Us One, I felt like it was still a little bit too soon to rewrite it,
Yeah.
quite honestly, and that was more than that. So I was thinking between 5 to 10 years versus 2 decades, but nonetheless, I think some.
The latest Last of Us remaster, that game came out when? Like end of the PS3 era, so like 2012 or something, 2011. And, that's 10 years since the,
Yeah,
the remaster came, so
but it's a combination, to me at least anyway, of the amount of time that has fallen between and the difference in the game itself. It shouldn't be just what's the word I'm looking for? They shouldn't just be like putting some lipstick on something. They shouldn't just be like a up. I know one of your favorite topics says
it
go
has to
different.
be
60,
significantly
60
different.
it hasn't can't be just 60 frames per second and some new textures or whatever. It needs to have new content. It needs to be new mechanics or whatever, something that would and that for that rationale, Like I would consider Final Fantasy VII to be eligible, and I would consider Resident Evil 1 at least to be eligible as well, because it's a very different game, right? It's the same premise, it's the same setting, it's the same tone, etc., but it's a different game. So that's that. You'd have to write down what the rules are, but just leaving it wide open, I think, is not good.
Yeah, no, and on principle, I think you and I are in violent agreement. I don't think the way they've done it, unless I missed something in the article that does put some kind of metrics around how it becomes eligible. Yeah, I agree. Like there needs to be some more clarification. I think now that they've opened the door, a 2-year-old or 3-year-old game getting a remake or a slight change in story or something, in theory, could qualify
Yeah, because
as a nominee.
by their own rationale, like if they're voting on criteria such as story, how much fun it is, how well reviewed it is, etc., if they don't have any additional criteria, then again, if Last of Us 2 won 2 years ago and it's better now, it should be one of the best games as well this year. And I think that would be too soon. There wouldn't be enough differences between the two versions of the game, and it wouldn't be a worthy winner in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at the definition here and it's just too open-ended, I think. Too wide open, and I think it's a mistake. And it's probably going to hurt a lot of people's feelings because Elden Ring Erdtree came out this year and was greatly applauded for the expansion that it was, and there's a good chance it'll be Game of the Year now. So
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I have trouble though. I would have trouble accepting a game of the year which required another game in order to play it.
yeah, it's an expansion.
Yeah,
It's
so
not a full game.
maybe DLCs and expansions should have their own category if they don't already. But maybe here's another one. Maybe like repackaged versions of games should have their own category. Like for example, Game of the Year editions. Overused term, but like things like The Witcher 3. Cyberpunk will most likely have another Game of the Year edition as well. If Spider-Man will probably have a Game of the Year, all the Assassin's Creeds will have multiple games of the year. So, like, when you come out with another, let's say, complete version, including all the DLC, etc., you should be eligible for another category of award, but maybe not the Game of the Year.
Yeah. Yeah, it clearly states that remakes and remasters are eligible in all categories, along with DLC. So, expansion packs, new game seasons. Like,
yeah, that seems very, very loose, right? And
it's insane to me. But you know what? We're just two people. And apparently the judges and everybody else that was consulted thought this was a good idea. Or maybe just Keeley went out and said, hey, I'm going to do this. Who knows?
I wouldn't be surprised if here's a
He is Canadian.
Here's a controversy or controversial take in it then. Maybe because all these game manufacturers are so obsessed with bringing out remakes and remasters, they're putting pressure on the Games Awards people to say, hey, we're putting a lot of effort into this. You need to make sure that this is included going forward, because they're spending a lot of money on this crap as well, right?
Yeah, that's a strong possibility, but
I'm not a huge fan of it. If something is completely rewritten, completely different, and there's a good amount of time between, I'm okay with it, and maybe it's well deserved. As I say, I'm not even saying Final Fantasy VII was the Game of the Year. That's not my argument. It's just that it was way different than the original Final Fantasy VII, and it was a good long time period between as well. So by that rationale, I would say if that was nominated, if that won, I would be fine with it if it deserved it on the other criteria.
Yeah, the nominees I think are out shortly. I mean, they're not out at the time of this recording, but we'll know soon enough what's made it in and what didn't, at least in terms of Game of the Year and all the other categories. But personally, I think this is kind of just garbage, but That's just me, and I think you'd probably agree it's not the best idea ever.
It needs some parameters around it, is all I can say.
Yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Nope.
Let them know where they can reach you.
You can get me at Fin1010, which is here, on Twitter or X, of course. And you can get me at Fin1010 without the one, with an I instead, on Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation.
And I am at Mental9R on X. Man, that was pretty
That's way smoother than my version.
It shocked me.
I could smell the sawdust burning as I was trying to figure out which way to go.
I looked at my background and went, okay, that's over that shoulder. Anyway, I'm Mental9R, or at Mental9R on X. I'm Mental9R on Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam, and just about anywhere else you can play games. This, of course, is at Caffeine Entertainment on YouTube and Rumble. And if you made it this far and you enjoyed this video, please let us know by leaving a like, maybe even a subscribe and a comment. That would be awesome. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm sure Finn would love to know your thoughts on this particular topic. Most of the stuff I see on X isn't exactly positive, so it'd be interesting. If you've got some good reasons to support this, is a great idea, I'd love to know what they are. So please leave a comment. And that's all I got to say on this. I'm Mental9R. He's Fin1010. This is Caffeine Entertainment. Don't forget, it's time to wake up and play some games.